Hello, welcome to Presume Technologies. I am Venkat. This is part 14 of ASP.NET Grid View tutorial. In this video, we'll discuss about conflict detection property of SQL data source control. Please watch part 13 of the ASP.NET Grid View tutorial before proceeding with this video. Now let's flip to SQL Server Management Studio. So I have this table TBL employee with some sample data. I want to display this data within the grid view control. So let's flip to Visual Studio, drag and drop grid view control. Let's auto format that. Let's choose brown sugar scheme. Let's drag and drop SQL data source control onto the web form, and let's configure this now. Select the connection string from web.config file. Click next. We want to retrieve the data from TBL employee. We want all the columns, so select star from TBL employee. And if you remember in the previous session, if we want to have the insert, update and delete statements to be auto generated, then we clicked on this advanced button and we have selected this option, generate, insert, update and delete statements. And then for now, let's leave this use optimistic concurrency checkbox unchecked and click OK. Now let's click next, test your query, click finish. Now let's associate the SQL data source control with this grid view control. And since we have insert, update and delete statements auto generated, we can enable the grid view to delete rows. So enable deleting, let's check that. So obviously delete button will be visible. Okay, now let's run this as it stands. And remember, when we were configuring the SQL data source control, we didn't select the checkbox use optimistic concurrency. Okay, so since that checkbox was unchecked, remember that. And then look at the delete command. It's pretty simple and straightforward. Delete from TBL employee, where employee ID is equal to @employee ID. So employee ID is the primary key for this column. So when somebody clicks this delete button, now the delete statement that's generated is going to use that primary key to delete that row from the database. Not only delete, if you look at the update statement, update TBL employee, set name is equal to @name, gender is equal to @gender, city is equal to @city, where employee ID is equal to @employee ID. Again, the primary key of that column, of the table, is used to match that row. Okay, now just imagine what's going to happen. Now if you look at the state of the data here in the grid view control, when we loaded this from the table, this is how the data was. Now while I'm looking at this data, somebody else can go and change the data in the table. For example, let's now update. If you look at the employee with ID is equal to 2, his name at the moment is John, but somebody issued this update query and changed the name of the person with employee ID is equal to 2. So now it's changed to Johnny. But if you look at the grid view control, it is still John. Now if I'm going to delete this row, without even knowing that somebody has updated that row, I'm going to delete this row. Okay, similarly, if I have an edit button, I would edit that, and maybe I change it from Johnny to maybe J. Okay, if I change it to J, and then if I update, I might be overwriting the changes which somebody else have done. Okay, so basically this is a concurrency problem. So what should happen if two users try to update the same data at the same time? Okay, so obviously, if somebody else has changed the data, and then when I try to update it, I should get a message stating that somebody else has changed data, or I should get that new data and display that in the grid view control, so that based on that I would either don't change the data or don't delete the data. Now look at this. Since the data is changed now, and if I click this delete button, I'm going to delete John's record without even realizing that somebody has changed his name. Okay, so that's basically concurrency problem. So how can we avoid these concurrency related issues? By using that optimistic concurrency. So let's see what is going to happen if I choose that checkbox. Okay, so let's go and reconfigure the SQL data source control. Let's click next. On the advanced tab, I'm going to choose this option, use optimistic concurrency. I'm going to click OK, click next, and then finish. Now let's flip this web form to the source mode and look at the generated delete and update queries now. Instead of just matching up the primary key in the where clause, look at this. Delete from TBL employee, where employee ID is equal to @original employee ID, and look at that, name is equal to @original name. So the name should be equal to the original name, meaning the name should be equal to what it was when we actually loaded the data into the grid view control. If it doesn't match, then the condition in the where clause is not met, so the row will not be updated. Okay, similarly, not only name, we have other columns as well, gender and city, and we have another or clause here. Or name is null and original name is null. So if that name has become null, then the original name should also be null. Okay, similarly, gender and city. And the same is the case with update. Even when you try to update, it's going to match the values with the original values. If they have changed, then the where clause will not match and the update statement will not go through. Okay, so let's see what happens now. So let's run this as it stands. And if you look at the state of the data at the moment, we have around 5 records. Now let's change David to Dave. So I'm going to say that's going to be employee ID 6. Let's update that. Now let's select the data back. So David has changed it to Dave, and if you look at the data in the grid view controller, it still says David. Now let me try to delete this and see what's going to happen. Pay close attention to the what happens on the screen. Look at that, it didn't delete the row, it simply refreshed. It loaded the grid view control with the new data. So what happened when I hit this delete button, this query was sent to the database, the delete query. Since the where clause did not match, no row was updated, and then the grid view simply refreshed with new data. Okay, so basically when that happens, look at this, there could be problems. If somebody changes the data, we are not deleting the data. Okay, so if that happens, then we want to display this message: employee row with employee ID is equal to 1 is not deleted due to data conflict, and I want that to be in red color. And if we successfully delete the row, then I want to say employee row with employee ID whatever is successfully deleted. Let's see how to achieve this. To achieve this, obviously we can make use of that row data bound event of the grid view control. Okay, so how do I generate the event handler for row data bound event? Right click on the grid view control, select properties, and then click on that lightning bolt symbol, the events icon, and then row. Actually, it's not row data bound event. We can make use of this row deleted event. So when this event is actually raised, this event is raised when the row is deleted from the grid view control. Okay, so after the row is deleted, that's when this event is raised. So I can make use of that event, and then within the event handler we have this grid view deleted event args object coming in as a parameter, and this object has got a parameter e dot affected rows. So if this affected rows count is greater than 0, then we know for sure a row is deleted. Otherwise, we know no row was deleted. So that's a clue for us to detect whether the row in question is deleted or not. And just to speed things up, I have this code already typed, so let me copy that and paste it within this event handler. So if you look at that, let's actually have a label control onto the web form so that we can display that message there. So let's drag and drop a label control. And let's get rid of the text property, and then let's set font bold is equal to true, and let's change the ID of this one to LBL message. Okay, so if you look at in the code behind file within the row deleted event, so when this event will be raised, this event will be raised after the row has been deleted. Okay, so we are setting LBL message.visible is equal to true, and then we are saying if e.affected rows is greater than 0, okay, meaning rows have been deleted. At that point, what are we doing? Label message.text employee row with employee ID is equal to, look at that, since I want employee ID in double quotes, I am using an escape sequence of backslash and a double quote. So that's the escape sequence character. And look at this, how am I getting the employee ID? Again, I'm making use of the keys property there, e.keys. Remember, the primary key for this table is employee ID. Okay, employee ID column. So we are using the keys property and then retrieving employee ID and converting that to string, and then again appending that to another double quote, and then is successfully deleted, and we are setting the fore color to navy. Else, if the affected rows count is basically if it's not greater than 0, then we know that no row has been deleted, in which case we are saying employee row with employee ID is equal to whatever is not deleted due to data conflict. We know for sure the data has changed, and that's why the conditions in the where clause didn't match and no row was deleted, and we are setting the color to red. So let's go ahead and run this now and see what's going to happen if we get the messages as expected. So basically that's the state of the data now. Now without changing any data, if I delete the row, look at that, that row is deleted. Employee with ID is equal to 4 is successfully deleted. Now let's change Pam's name to P. Okay, and that's employee ID 5. So let's update that. And obviously if you look at the data within the table, so Pam's name is P, but when in the grid view control it's Pam. Let's delete that. Look at that, employee row with employee ID is equal to 5 is not deleted due to data conflict, so we get the message as expected. Alright, on this slide you can find resources for ASP.NET, C# and SQL Server interview questions. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.